Like, oh, I just don't feel like I can charge this because I'm a small business with values. And it's like, girl, that's exactly the point. Your small business is values. Like, of course you can charge whatever you need to charge. The truth is, money is something that we will inherently approach in an emotional way. But I think it's just fascinating that we're trying to, and guilty because I'm trying to approach things in a very data driven, logical way. And when it comes to my own money, my budgeting, my cash flow, all of that, when ultimately so much of it is so wrapped up in so many emotions, trying to detach that rather than acknowledge it and bring it in somehow, it's just, no wonder it wasn't getting me where I needed to go or like needed to
Yeah.
get.
Money is never just about money. It's about who we are, what we've been through, and the systems we live within. And that's what we talk about here on the Money Story Project. This is not about glamorized rags to riches tales, fixing our so-called flaws, and it's definitely not about quick fix finance hacks and the latest gimmick. We invite people to tell their own money stories. We also bring in subject matter experts who share both their lived experience and their professional wisdom, helping us make sense of what we've carried and our path forward. I'm Harriet Formby, a chartered accountant, fractional CFO, and trauma-informed finance coach. I work with mission-led business owners who are changing the world for the better. Today, I'm joined by Paulina Folaron. Paulina is a digital marketing and operations consultant, solutions specialist, cat mum, and self-proclaimed kitchen witch. She helps business owners find method in the madness, turning endless ideas into practical actions for more structure, more focus, more growth, and more ease. Paulina is the first person I would always think of if you want magical emails that aren't too salesy, but show you off in the best light. Welcome, Paulina.
Oh, hi. That was such a great intro. Thank you so much. I feel so honored to be here.
You're really welcome. So I'd like to start off with a check-in around money today. So when I say the word money,
Yeah.
what feelings, reactions are coming up for you today?
Oh, so many. There was like a whole whoosh of energy through me as you said money. I'm thinking like opportunity and open doors and like possibility. But there is that little bit like that sort of 5%, 10%, like weight. There's a weight. There's that pull of the old stories of, the classics of money doesn't grow on trees and am I deserving enough? That deservedness feeling of it. So I'm very much trying to go into, when you say money, genuinely, I was like, oh, there's so much we can do. It is a feeling of possibility and it's a feeling of options. And it's just a question of how and when, not if. So that's a new thing I've gained and I'm working on, yeah?
Amazing. Yeah. So you alluded there to the fact that money maybe hasn't always felt that way. So could you tell me a little bit about how it's maybe felt in the past?
Yeah, 100%. So I think, oh God, I've been on such a journey. Journey, big word, hate the word, but there's no way around it. Yeah, the journey being, feeling like you just have to work hard to deserve any money you get. And even then, it feels there's like a limit because there's only so hard that you can work. And by that, I mean, we all have a certain 100%. And I know you can say, oh, I've put 150% effort. That's not a thing, guys. Yeah. It's 100% is there is a reason why it's 100 because it's 0 to 100. That's it. 100% is the maximum. So unless you're literally steering straight, like headlong first into burnout, then sure, give 150%. You crack on, mate. But it's that idea that you can give 100% all the time and whatever it is that you actually want or wish for your life might still not happen. Like there's this external lottery that's happening to you rather than with you. And this idea that you're blocked or your life is predetermined, very deterministic approach really is what I've grown up with, is that you very much are going to be within what you grew up with. And, without segueing this podcast, we can have another episode, Harriet, on things like upbringing, privilege, and intergenerational wealth, because that is incredibly deterministic to where you're going in the future. But, to be brought up with that way as well, that it just felt like no matter what else I do, very much the only paths that are available to me are the paths that I'm seeing that people have already achieved, like in my closest family or within my closest friends. And it felt very much like these are my choices. These are, sort of blinkers on, not because I chose to, but I felt like those bringing me up and those around me as figures of authority, other adults, whatever shape they were the ones keeping those blinkers on my face in hopes of, I don't know, maybe protecting me from some failed hopes, trying to, shelter me from trying too hard and burning too bright. No, and crashing too hard, essentially, and not. But it sort of was that somewhat closed-mindedness. Yeah, I know with the best of meanings, I'm sure. But yeah, the idea that this is what it is and that's the safer path, so stick to that path. Like, don't step out of line too much, feeling a bit like that. So different, very different, and a connection to what you deserve. So the money you get, it defines what your value is and vice versa. So there's conversations around money. One would be very few and far in between, because one doesn't talk about money. One has money. Huh? Awful, awful. I hope you guys enjoyed that sound. And secondarily, it was at the same time, even though you didn't talk about the money, you got talked about the money you have by other people, and you did the same to other people, and you commented and you sort of verbally gawked at other people's lives and tried to make the things add up. You're like, something's not adding up. So that means they're either cheating or there's some kind of feeling of trying to cheat the system. If those people you were talking about weren't just living the same life as you, but they somehow had this whole other extra thing. And then these external, non-tangible things are brought into the conversations. Oh, they lucked out. So it's the whole, it has to be external, non-tangible, nothing that was in your control. Because if it's luck, it just happens or it doesn't happen. Then what's it matter what I do? Because it's either going to happen to me or it's not going to happen to me. So that interesting taking away the autonomy over our control of the money. That was, I think that's like a really predominant feeling as well.
Yeah, so there's a sense of, you mentioned about needing to work hard, but there's only a limit. And then once you've worked 100%, unless you're going to burn out, it's almost like you're hitting a wall, because what you've grown up around was, these are the things you can do. Anything outside of that is maybe risky or it's not for you.
Oh, it's literally not possible, because there's a very strong feeling, like unless you know, and this is a cultural thing for me as well, but unless you know a person, you can't make a certain thing happen to you. Like there's no other way to get to that idea or that job or that opportunity or contract or client unless you know a person. And how can you know a person when you're just a tiny little working class? You don't belong in those spheres. So there's that somewhat classist split as well. That's
so it's about but it comes down to belonging, and it's about who you are, and that having a definition of what you can access. Is that yeah
100%, and it sort of predefines you. So then it's hard because you feel like you're in a losing position as you start off. And I say that knowing the entire time that I do hold so many privileges through the way I look, the fact that I'm able-bodied, a lot of other things. Yet there's still, those ideas of the things that I'm not privileged in coming in. And isn't it interesting that I have so many things going for me on the scale of sort of socioeconomic general approaches, and yet you can still feel that way. There's so many things there's a lot of things to unpack, essentially.
Yeah. You also mentioned that this wasn't necessarily said out loud, it was more picked up. And the idea that if somebody was doing something different or that maybe didn't seem to stack up, like if they seemed to have more money than what you knew about them would allow, that there was kind of talk trying to suss out almost how they did that, what was going on, what were they doing. So that seems quite interesting. So there's an element of, you wouldn't ask, you wouldn't mention it, but you would be desperately trying to work it out. Do you think that comes from a place of kind of like how are they doing that? Because they maybe seem to be breaking the rules of what we thought was possible. Is that maybe an element, or?
Potentially, yeah. I think the cynicism is strong with us, and this is the like Polish culture of this is it's a big historical context as well of like communist era pre Berlin Wall fall and then the early 90s of early capitalism, where there were major factors in, like, say, the 70s and 80s, where those who had more privileges given to them financially or otherwise were because often they would be, say, informants or, things like that. It gets historically quite complicated, but I think it's also
Mm,
left us with this cynicism and distrust of someone who is sticking out and doing better than others. Are they getting handouts? Are they selling information for getting this extra ration of something? That's like post-war. And unfortunately, that was quite true for a time. And I think generationally, that was then passed on as cynicism and distrust of anyone who, like you said, anyone who's doing significantly better than the general populace around you. So let's think about how blinkered that is, because you can only see your bubble. You can't really see what the true, average is. Um,
mm,
like how much better are they doing and why? So then you, rather than go, oh, hey, let's have this interesting conversation of what you've done, and so maybe you can inspire me, or maybe I can fit in with your plans somewhere because I'm also an interesting person with many skills. The conversation instead isolates us, and we're going, oh, they must be dodgy. They must be dodgy buggers. Why? How did they do that? Are
yeah,
they, is I don't know. I can think of many, many crimes. White collar crime, probably. What have they
yeah.
done to do this? And it never seems like you can trust that abundance is honest.
Abundant. Yeah, you can never trust that abundance is
Mm-mm.
honest. So that's really interesting, because you mentioned there that actually this isn't all hearsay. This was real stuff. Like, so
Yeah,
some people were actually being informed, against
yeah,
their own people,
mhm,
essentially, which means there was a real reason to be wary. There was a
yes,
real valid, root cause of this is because
hmm,
actually people had been harmed by others who had given information and then
hmm,
financially benefited from it. So
yes,
actually, people doing well could the
hmm,
suspicion that they're up to no good, whether it's crime, whether it's
hmm,
all of these
hmm,
things that are not
yeah,
good things and not good
yeah,
for society, is
no,
getting them wealth. And then
hmm,
it's almost like there's association then with people doing well as being
yeah.
they're up to no good.
Which I think we've then carried on to now. And I know I've definitely held for a long time. I think I'm still working through that, but at least now I'm aware of it.
Mm,
That wealth can only come if you're willing to sell out on your values, that you can't be making big money. And this is a conversation that happens a lot because we're talking about how to earn whatever money is good for you, whatever. Because I say, earn good money. When I say good money, every one of our listeners right now will have a different number in their heads. What's good
yeah.
money to you? It could be 2 grand or it could be 20 grand because it's so dependent on what your life is, what your other parameters are in your head. And none of those numbers are wrong. It's just what is good to you. But we have this conversation a lot, don't we, Harry? That it's like how the people come back and sort of go like, oh, I just don't feel like I can charge this because I'm a small business with values. And it's like, go, that's exactly the point. You're a small business with values. Like, of course you can charge whatever you need to charge. And that idea that values and money are interchangeable and exchangeable. So essentially you can't have values and be, mission led somehow unless you're a charity, and a charity that actually makes no money, because that's a terrible charity. But that seems to be the idea, that you need to get the money, you need to sell out on what you believe in. I mean, how many companies have we seen that have done that, to raise income and investment, big investment, like angel investors and all of that, they literally had to change quite a lot of things about how the business operates or perhaps what it stands for, which then stops to being who they are and what made us buy from them in the first place. I think it doesn't help that we've
Mhm.
seen that happen in this now late stage capitalism, because it's hard to then shed this idea where you've seen it happen and you think, is there an alternative? Well, the alternative seems to be I don't sell out and I remain poor, which obviously is not true. But I feel like it's very much like either or that seems to come up from a lot of people that I speak to about this.
Yeah, that's so true. An example thinking of recently was like the brand a lot of people will be familiar with, Wild deodorant, which
Oh,
was
yes.
really nice, environmentally friendly, and I can't remember who bought them out. It was one of the big players, and now there's cynicism now
Unilever.
of yeah, Unilever, that's it, and it's like, well, that is no brand values for a lot of people, and now you're thinking, well, perhaps we will boycott them, etc. But
Yeah.
there's an example there of actually, yeah, the cynicism of selling out essentially, and
Mhm. And the
it's
truth is, we don't know
interesting,
what
yeah.
actually happened. Like, we're calling it, how it's interesting, isn't it? Because we are somewhat with audacity calling it a sellout. But okay, so they had certain values for that certain iteration in their business. Maybe and I'm completely guessing here. I've done no research on the brand beyond knowing it exists while deodorant, and I knew it got sold to Unilever. But if you think of the building steps of a business, some founders rightfully and cleverly, they sit down, they build that strategy, and they go, okay, we're going to build a product around these values because we want to appeal to these people, which is absolutely fine. And especially if they're not lying about this product, great. All of that, we're going to build it up because that's the future, da 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 da. And then at the stage when we reach X value, we're going to look to sell, take our money, and have a great life. Why are we so bitter about that?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, where there's a whole other conversation here to be had about our identifying of our values and our own identities with this brand who matched the values. So there's a concept of we're now feeling like you and I were just with our reaction to this one idea, just one example you gave, we're feeling a little bit betrayed. Do we hold shares in Wild? I don't. Do you?
No.
Like what's our vested interest that we feel so passionate? And I think it is because it feels like a small betrayal when actually you don't have a vested interest in it. So yeah, I think there's a hey, let's have another episode on this, on brands and identity and how you get a following, how you get an audience, how you align together, and how it then affects the next step you do with your business. Even though they don't own your business, you'd have responsibility to them with what you do with that business. And I say that having
Mm,
just said, maybe that was the founder's plan all along to have done this. And to them, selling to Unilever, it's like that was the dream. That is such a big player in the field. That is the
yeah,
Goliath of the field. And they've managed to sell to them.
yeah.
Amazing.
And
But
we don't
yeah,
know that then, and I don't know the people obviously, but what they might be doing brilliant things with the money they've made, and we don't know
100%.
that. But it's interesting
No.
how just widespread
Our
the
reaction,
the
yeah, is interesting.
reactions are, and they come from that place of
Yeah.
we've put an expectation on those
Yeah.
founders essentially.
Yeah.
And it's
And
interesting you mentioned around small business, and you come into it with charging and feeling something around that. And if you've got a story that people that make good money are bad people, they're cheating and lying and
friend, something's off.
dishonest, it's like, I don't want to be a cheating,
Um,
lying, dishonest person. So it's easy to see that story comes for the business space of
yeah.
actually charging puts me at risk of being somebody that maybe will betray my people, my
Mm.
community.
Yeah. And that you hit the nail on the head right there, Harriet, because this whole concept around tribalism and our need to belong for survival, it's so strong. It will translate onto every aspect of your life. It's going to translate around why people stick around toxic friends or toxic family members without addressing it and trying to change something, for example, and just carry on in that dynamic, or toxic relationships of any kind, or just ones that aren't serving them that could be worked on. Not everything has to be toxic, 100%. Um, that's one thing. And then it translates all the way onto our way of following and buying from brands, because I was listening to, okay, I'm going to like segue in another thing. I was listening to, are you familiar with Amanda Montell? Are you familiar with her? If you're not, I would
No,
recommend.
let's tell us about Amanda.
So Amanda is an author. She's a linguist and a writer, and as someone who I hold a master's in translation, so I'm fascinated by language and like how it affects people and how what we say, words matter. Like if I was a house in, you know, um, Game of Thrones, my house words would be words matter. Literally. I feel like that is like a shining beacon for me
Yeah.
my entire life. It's really important what you say and how you say it. And it's not to say you're not allowed to make errors with how you express yourself. Of course you are. I've made many. As you can hear, I speak at the speed of, a machine gun, I'm sure. Um, I'm working on it, okay? But words do matter. And the way we use certain words or the fact that we choose to use those words often shows this a certain subconscious something else. It could be a belief we hold. It could be a background we come from. The same goes to accents. It's super interesting to me anyway. Amanda is an author of a book called Cultish. And I'm just listening to it on Audible at the moment. She also has a podcast about that. And what it is
Mm.
that it's the language of fanaticism, but also what she's calling cultish, where things are not quite a cult, but sort of ish, like ish. And she covers and she talks about different brands. So these phenomena that really swept people away, like Soul Cycle and a lot of MLMs, and all these things that create this entire culture to really bring you into them and make you live and breathe their space as a brand and to keep buying from them. What language do they use? To what end? Why? What are they trying to achieve? What ecosystem do they create? She talks all about that. She talks about genuinely harmful cults too, of course, and she compares the two though. So her idea is she talks about the big ones that we think, oh, that's a cult, that's not. But she challenges what we call a cult and why. And then she talks about the language of it. Draw breath.
Yeah, does she have a podcast where she goes through is something a cult? Yeah, I've listened to the podcast. I love it. Yeah. I
Yeah, it
just didn't
sounds
know
like
the
a cult.
name. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds like a
sounds
cult.
like a
Yeah.
cult. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
I
And it
love it
goes
because she'll
through
talk about like all sorts of things. Like she'll talk about Swifties and be like, is it a cult? Is it not? And then she makes a judgment at the end. And spoiler
yeah.
alert, Swifties were not a cult. But she talks about all the others. And sometimes it's a cult of personality, which I found fascinating because we have such big figures. And this bringing it back to the money thing, which can often be like such a divider. You have these, again, these like Goliaths of, and then we have this whole media narrative around them. I don't really want to name drop people that I don't follow, and I would never want anyone to follow. So I'm not going to, but I think we can all think of a certain tech person who created some cars. That
Yeah.
guy. So, there's this whole narrative around this person, and it makes them all, Steve Jobs, he's passed away, we can mention him. That creates this entire narrative about a person. And I think then the populace, we look at these certain people, like the chosen ones, and we try and go, oh, what made them have this wealth? What made them have this abundance? And there often is this creation of this myth of originality as well, where you go, because they had this super original idea and that's what did it. That's again, I can really go off on the tangent there, but it's really interesting so going back to my original point when I mentioned Amanda and the tribalism part is the language that we all use, and then the language that these leaders of industries use makes us them or not flock to them. And then it makes us feel like part of something, an identity that we can wear, an identity that we can, try on for a day, for a week, for months, or for the rest of our lives if we're really sold to that particular brand. And it's interesting then what ideas come with it when it comes to wealth, when it comes to belonging. And then we get those reactions like, oh, well, deodorant has been sold too. Well, that jars me now. But if we were part of a different brand, if we followed a different company in that similarly devoted way, would our reaction be different? We all know, I'm sure in your circles, an early adopter who, as soon as the next iPhone is out, they can't wait. They're running. They are literally tripping over. They're right in the store queuing up because they need that next Apple fix that comes out. And I'm laughing a little bit saying it just because I'm not an Apple girly, but I get it. The whole point of that the culture that's created sounds like a cult. Culture that's created is so strong, and that has such power on all of it, on our money stories as well. I think because isn't it interesting how we're willing to spend whatever money the next iPhone costs if we're that devoted to it and we believe in that what the product gives us in our life.
And sometimes it's counterintuitive because there's this thing of, oh, there's not much money about the economy, etc. But Apple sales are still high. And it's like, because that tied to the identity of being like an Apple user or whatever
yes,
is so strong
yes.
that it's not a money decision. It's not like, oh, well, I'm going to get another brand because it's cheaper. It's like, no, because my identity is tied to being somebody that uses
100%.
that product.
Yeah.
And
you would have seen it a lot with all the people that you work with, I'm sure, through your incredible work on money stories. Guys, if you haven't yet, why? You all need to do it. Please get in touch with Harriet. But I'm sure you've seen it a
Thank
lot
you.
where, you'd be looking at people's accounts and talking to them and having these really in-depth, incredible coaching conversations. And you're going, none of these decisions are actually made logically, like, or very few. I would say, if we're going to go with generalizing 80-20, I know it's been like, it's a myth and all that, but I like the idea of 80-20 rule for a lot of things for the sake of visualizing something. And I honestly believe through my own limited research of people around me that 80% of our decisions on money and what we're doing with it, not just spending, but all of it, is totally emotional. Totally. And
Mm.
some of it will be done relating to that tribalism part where we're going, I don't want to stick out. So I'm going to buy this similar thing to someone else. I'm going to buy, I want to fit in with this tribe that I've created that I identify with. Some of it will be for fitting in. Some of it will be for survival. And then whatever survival means to you through your own upbringing and your own circumstances. And only 20% will actually be something that we feel like we've sat down and we thought, pros, cons, here's my list. But actually, even that, like we can put a guise of logic on things. But truth is, money is something that we will, I think, inherently approach in an emotional way. That doesn't make it a bad thing, but I think it's just fascinating that we're trying to, and guilty, because I know you've talked to me about this loads. I'm trying to approach things in a very data-driven, logical way. And when it comes to my own money, my budgeting, my cash flow, all of that, when ultimately so much of it is so wrapped up in so many emotions, trying to detach that rather than acknowledge it and bring it in somehow, it's just, no wonder it wasn't getting me where I needed to go or like needed to
Yeah.
get.
For those of you listening, if this episode is resonating, please do leave a review and make sure you are following wherever you get your podcast from, so you'll be the first to hear when the next episode lands. And if you know of a pal or a business friend who would enjoy this conversation as well, please forward it on to them, tell them all about it so they can enjoy it as well. Okay, let's get back to the conversation. Can you tell us a little bit more about
Mm.
maybe some examples you've lived through of maybe where you've made spending decisions yourself that
Mhm.
maybe illustrates that point?
Oh, yeah, sure. So something that I think every small business owner will relate to is that course, guys, that quick CPD fix. Come on, it's $20. Why wouldn't
Mm.
you? Well, hopefully it's only that. But I also know I haven't done that one myself because the skeptic in me is strong. But I know the pull on a big online course is very, very, very strong. And unfortunately, for every amazing online program that is out there, and I can name a good handful, and I'm sure you can as well, there is at least 5 of those that actually will just tell you what you already know, aren't going to give you the amount of sort of hand holding slash support slash that human touch that you actually need to learn, and what all different learners. So that's something that a lot of these programs don't actually adjust for. Um, and before you know it, you've forked out, 3 grand on something that you aspirationally bought because you emotionally you needed the support. You felt maybe isolated or alone with something. You felt like you were doubting yourself and you just needed someone else to guide you. But unfortunately, that's not what that course was going to do for you because it's just like a self-learning or, maybe once a month there's a live call where you're there with 20 other people. I could
Mm.
go on, but those, I think buying any sort of training or self-investment is a bit of a minefield. Um, and that also annoys me a little bit because I think some of it can be a bit predatory in a way that it actually plays on our emotions. When we land on that landing page, you can tell that it's trying to sort of like scaremonger you into a decision. Sometimes it's trying to give you that scarcity bit of, oh, limited time and this. And it's tricky. That line between where I think it's a great way to market and to speak truly to the people you're speaking to, and where it crosses the line into scaring people into making that decision can sometimes be a really fine line. And what makes the difference really is the values that you're leading with. But yeah, I'd say that like
Mm.
courses definitely. I've done the countless, like literally, guys, countless, both of my hands by this point of these like $20-$30 things. But that's my limit. I would say nothing beyond $50 and nothing more than like once every 2 months or once a quarter. And I tend to
Yeah.
follow the person thoroughly before I make that decision. So even if I go, I'm going to regret this or I'm not quite sure, I go, okay, if I can write off that $30 on that, gamble that this is just going to be a waste of my time or something I already knew, maybe on some level I needed to be shown that I already knew this. So I allow myself
Yeah.
$30, but I
And
wouldn't
if
allow myself to waste 3 grand.
yeah, and if it's an amount of money that you're
Mhm.
comfortable to spend, it's almost like the stakes aren't so high. And actually,
Mm.
sometimes even if you can look it up on YouTube, you need this sort of financial investment, even if it's $20,
Mhm.
to make your brain go, oh, actually, okay, I've
Yes.
spent money on this, so I'm going to sit through it because I've actually invested in it. And sometimes you
Yeah.
need that little trigger to do
Yes.
it. But it's interesting, you mentioned about how our emotions, when we're being sold to, it's
Mm.
actually very sophisticated. The way
Yes.
that um, these offers use emotion to
Mhm.
make us feel like, we want to belong by being part of, sometimes
Yeah.
it might be a cultish following that the
Yeah.
course or
Yeah.
the opportunity has, and
Yeah.
they want you to belong.
Mhm.
And also the fear of missing out, and
Mhm.
oh well, you could just do this and this. And
Mhm.
it's really interesting how that is played so strongly, but we
Yes.
might be fully aware that this is going on. And I think as you're in business for a few years, you get more cynical, and you've seen it play out, and you can
You
almost
get
go through and
wiser.
like do a bingo card of the ways that they're trying
Yes.
to pull at your emotions. But it's also interesting because a lot of the time it's subconscious, and you're not necessarily aware of what is happening to you.
Yeah.
Or even if you know that these tactics are being used,
Mhm.
you still feel them because you're only human, and that's what we do. We're designed to connect with people
Mhm.
and want to belong, and
Yeah.
that's such a strong thing in terms of where we pay to be. And
Yes.
there's really good examples, like for example, myself and Paulina are both in a community called Wild Co-working, which is a lovely place to be, and it has really nice people. And for example, that is an investment to be in that space, but it's not done in a predatory way. It's a
No.
values led and a genuine, supportive
Mhm.
environment. So it's not to say that actually spending money on being in community is a bad thing. It's just that often people are playing on our emotions. And if
Mhm.
we haven't maybe done the work to work out why we feel a certain way about
Yes.
shame and money and
Yeah.
making investments, and
Mhm.
a big one that comes up actually is borrowing money for these things. So it's almost the idea of putting things on payment plans and credit cards. And I know that can be a big thing in terms of
Yes.
like the stigma about if it's something you really want to invest in, but then the stigma of actually maybe going into debt to do something like this it can be a big one.
Yeah, 100%. I think that that just becomes so individual, doesn't it? It's the circumstances can be so acutely different and very nuanced. Like I firmly believe that each of you is the expert of what actually your financial situation is, your financial aspirations are in the future, and where you lead that and where things actually are. It's you're the only ones who can see that, clearly. You can be working with Harry, um, you know, or anybody else, or you could have already spoken to your partner, go, oh, we're so honest with each other, we're very clear on where things are. No, you're not, unless they literally have access to that account and they can browse through the statements. That's not the same. And you can be working, like I was saying, you can be working with Harriet, but it's if you withhold the information because there is a shame, an internalized shame about something, like, oh, I did this and that was, now I feel silly about it, or I feel like I got duped, or I feel like I did the thing but then I didn't follow through. Double shame. You spent and you didn't follow through. How dare you? Shame is just round the corner all the time trying to catch us. And I say that now, minding what I'm about to say, is that we are inherently emotional beings, and that's actually a wonderful thing. That's not a bad thing. We're not advocating here that we switch that off and make all our decisions really logically, because like I said, I don't think that's actually doable. I think it's a bit of a mirage, isn't it? When we think, oh, I've made that with that completely logical mind. No, I haven't. What I did do is make that decision from a regulated space but it was still would have been guided by certain emotions. I just wouldn't have been activated, agitated in the middle of having a meltdown. That's what I'm not going to do
Yeah.
decision making, but it's still going to be driven by certain emotions. Ideally, you want them to be the ones that you actually want to be leading you in your life. And that's the distinction to be made here. Because all the selling that's happening, it's always going to be playing on some kind of emotion. But you have the control, and by control I mean the mindful choice to decide which emotion do you want to be led by. If you want to be led by, you're landing on someone's landing page for a community or a program or whatever it is, and you feel like this makes you feel really like light and happy and like warm inside and go, this sounds genuinely like what I could do. And there isn't an exit cost and a catch that then makes you feel like, oh, like your stomach's clenching, you going, oh, I don't know, that's a bit of a risk and a gamble. These feelings that are coming up for a reason, weigh that up. Don't shut it down and go, oh, logically, this cost versus that cost, and this is my monthly whatever. Think, why am I feeling like this? Why did I feel warm and fuzzy? But then when I saw this piece of terms and conditions, I felt like this. Is the internalized shame? Is it just a conversation I had with my mother yesterday that I wasn't emotionally prepared for? Or is it because there is some fear that even though you've done all your numbers, you worry that you'll be short by that next month, and that's something that you can't be short by. These are, honestly, we could literally go on for half an hour, couldn't we, Harriet, on all the different complex nuances of that, but ultimately feeling into what is it that you're able, like you were saying earlier, what is that amount that you can go without and you can invest into trying things and experimenting with things and getting that new perspective. Do commit that. Do that, because nothing replaces exposing yourself to new people, their thoughts, being able to be around a new perspective in a new community. And maybe it could be just the best community for your growth.
Mm.
It could just be that. Or maybe you join something and you go a month later, do you know what? I knew I was right when I signed up. I knew I wouldn't have time for this. It's okay. I'll just leave now. And you can just cancel and leave. Win, win, win. Either way, you learn something. But it's when, you buy a thing or you join a thing and there's these exit costs that are much bigger and more riskier. That's when I would just say, take your time over that decision, really feel into your feelings. And if there is some doubt, sit with that doubt, journal about it, speak to a professional, whatever your way of going about it is, but don't just shut it down. Maybe don't make a decision from that point of doubt or shame, because I don't see how that can grow into something really positive when it starts like that. Um, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen ever. It's just not right now.
Yeah, that's really
Right?
lovely, and it's almost like the emotions are on our side. They're trying to
Mm.
keep us safe, and sometimes they do get it a bit wrong, and they're over vigilant maybe, and that's where we have to
Mm.
go, like, be curious of, well, what is really going on?
Yeah.
Can I trust this emotion, or do I need to see what the story is behind it? And I'd love to know, actually, I know you mentioned about growing up and like culturally and
Mhm.
stuff, but was there a sense of what you spend your money on? Like, what was seen as kind of a good or bad way to spend money? Is there anything that comes up through that?
Oh, that's interesting. There's definitely been this sort of categorizing of what is a good spend and what's like a not flamboyant. What's the other word? That spend that's like throwaway spend.
Extravagant or
Yeah, I guess.
yeah.
But yeah, the word will come back to me. But the idea of that there are spends that were unnecessary, and it's actually you might misjudge that yourself. And the idea that like someone else has to be, I don't know, like your mum or dad or someone is like, well, that was a bit of a like silly spend, like you
Mm,
silly spending money. And it would be anything to do with spending on yourself,
yeah.
anything to do with spending on yourself. I remember when I got into a habit, so first-ish, second year of being in business, where I had a full year where I would have a treatment, like a massage or something, once a month. It was like a promise to myself as a CEO day that I
Yeah.
needed that. I deserved that. It was in the budget. So 3, three pillars of my decision making. And emotionally, obviously, it felt great to think, hey, I'm going to go have a massage. So tick. Um, those four pillars all aligned. Happy to do that. And I did do that. And for example, when I spoke to some family members about it, just, casually mentioned, because it's no big deal. This is just, oh, what were you doing yesterday? Oh, I went and did that. Ooh, fancy, was the response. I was like, okay, no, thank you. It was interesting to have that, and the anger that I felt at that being thrown in my face, an adult woman with a business, for crying out loud. It was interesting to feel this like childhood, literally echo of that feeling as I was growing up come up again. And I got obviously immediately defensive, which I worked through. It's fine. I'm obviously very calm about it. No,
Yeah.
it was interesting. It was really interesting that it's that external judgment of what you're spending on yourself. And I say the words, that's non-negotiable. So I'm shifting, what is the line for what's a non-negotiable spend, which I was taught is just bills and food, obviously, but nothing else. Everything else was like extravagant. Oh, you're living well then. Comments like that, which were meant to be jokes, quote unquote. Just jokes. Oh, lighten up a bit. It's just jokes. There were some good conversations that followed all of that. And we've straightened things out a little bit since then. It was interesting to get that clash where I've made some decisions very consciously on I want to try and move my comfort zone from what my core childhood me believed is the necessary or the core spenders that I'm allowed, because the elders of my life told me I'm allowed and should be doing these things. And what the adult me has since decided is non-negotiable to my well-being and helping me be a better business owner, a better sister, a better partner, a cat mom, daughter, whoever, friend, right? And that would help me. And that would genuinely help me. That could be anything else. Like it could be an expensive candle you get once every 3 months, or it could be a meal in a cafe by yourself once a week. Like if I'm putting aside that if it's in your budget, because I can't speak for that for anyone else, how they work it out. I'm trusting that you will all think of that rather than just go, put it on credit because Paulina said so. Please don't do that. Yeah, but it was an interesting clash. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That
It's
just
almost like it's
but
interesting that you've broken the cycle almost there. You've kind of broken the cycle of the
what?
stigma potentially. You could have gone into business and said, well, I can't spend on myself because there's a lot of shame around that, and that's going to be judged that is I don't deserve it, or it's frivolous or whatever.
Frivolous.
But
That was the word.
yeah, frivolous. That's a good word. Yeah. And then you said, actually, no, this is important. Like this is a non-negotiable, and you built it in. So you said, like it's a monthly thing. It means it happens. It doesn't slip because it's part of your routine. But it's so interesting that you've almost had projected onto you. And I'm not going to go into the context of who it was or whatever, but essentially that the story could, that you're almost clashing then with whoever it is almost seeing for themselves. Oh, but I wonder why I'm going without. Maybe they're saying like, oh, so hang on, Paul is doing it. So are we allowed to spend money like this? Is this okay? And then you get the projected judgment kind of on you because someone else is going through that thought process. Hang on a minute, Paulina is just treating herself and it seems to be fine. Like, what the hell? And then you're having to deal with like your defensiveness because actually you're probably feeling you have to justify yourself because have you worked hard enough for it? Are you still a good honest person if you have a massage once a month? And that's like really interesting that you've managed to break that stigma almost of being allowed to spend on yourself.
It's it's a work in progress, as you know, but I think the more you practice it, the easier it becomes, like the entire boundaries conversation with whoever. And I don't mind saying that was a conversation with my mum, like generationally for her. You didn't do frivolous spends because economically things were too fragile and changing too often. And you didn't know if one day you had that to spare, but then you spent it and the next day something else could happen. So that uncertainty has really shaped the way she sees money. And it's now interesting and fairly regular conversation we have actually, since we've like had a really big reshuffle when I was sort of in my late 20s around the topic, where we now exchange those ideas instead. So, I'll say things and she'll react in a certain way, but I can hold that now and I can respond to her and I can point it out gently and then she can reflect, which she has been. And then we can have a really interesting conversation about where her ideas are coming from. So that, yeah, the whole boundaries conversation of where your boundaries are for certain, not just for certain conversations, but for certain actions that you do, what matters to you and why. It's interesting to start working that out truly for yourself and peel away those influences that you've just taken in as the fabric of your life, but actually you're not doomed to have to do it the same way. And I say doomed because I found that very restrictive. I found it like a weight on my shoulders to just feel like every spend I'm looking at, I'm questioning, is that frivolous though? Is this too much? Like, what if I spend it and something happens tomorrow and I go, I knew it. I knew I shouldn't have done that. That kind of, oh God, that just gives me like a chill just to voice that thinking again, because that's a
Yeah.
very limiting thinking. And again, millionth time, but I'll keep saying it, while I'm not advocating spending for the sake of, and things will be fine. I do have a certain very strongly pragmatic approach. Maybe that's still some limiting thoughts in there. Sure. But, working on that. Whereas that balance between wanting to bring in some abundance and believing it's coming and taking actions that put you in the way of those opportunities, making your luck, meeting it halfway, pick your phrase. I don't care. They're all the same to me. Like whether it's a mindset shift or it's manifestation, it's all the same. The point is you are thinking of yourself as one who is worthy and deserving of those things coming through. And you are making the steps that are in your control and your vicinity and your like cultural and physical bubble to meet those opportunities. And then instead, if, that to me is a total then opposite of what I grew up with. You can only make decisions based on the very situation that is in front of you right now for tomorrow. And that's it. Like you can't go further because you never know. You never know. Yeah, but what if the never know is a positive thing? What if tomorrow, like, I don't know, I'll find a chest of gold in my garden. I'm making crap up now. But, like, why is there you never know? Never a positive. Have you ever heard anyone say you never know, but meant it in a positive way? Because I don't think I have.
Yeah, I totally relate. We spend a lot of time thinking about like worst case scenario, but we never think
Hmm.
about best case scenario. We never like
Yes.
daydream about the best thing, okay, we might do, but generally it's always the worry
It's
about like
usually,
what
oh,
if
if
and
I
it's
win the
a bad
lottery.
thing.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
never
like
like, oh, but if I land this
cynical.
client, exactly. But if I
Yeah.
land a client, which will cover me for the next 3 months, why are we not thinking about that? Instead, we're going, if I win a lottery or if I die tomorrow. Like, those are only two scenarios in the head.
It's quite
Bonkers.
extreme, isn't it? Yeah, that's it.
Bonkers.
And like we can show care for like where it came from is
Yeah.
survival and like
Mhm.
this historical context that means actually, yeah, you had to be really, really on it. Otherwise it could be life or death stuff. But now sometimes we can get trapped in that thinking of always the worst case thing and then not just giving ourselves permission to enjoy little
Exactly.
things now and enjoy life now and trust ourselves that we can influence the future and we can influence good things
Yeah.
happening, I suppose. So I'd love to just finish with asking you like a cathartic question.
Mhm.
If money were a person, what would you like to say to them?
Oh, come on over. Pull up a pew. Let's chat. I definitely. Oh, just come here. We've got things to do. Come on. Let's go. That's what I want to do. I want to really invite it into the conversation more.
Yeah, I love that. So inviting money into the
Hmm.
dialogue. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. 100%. There's so much power there, but not in that way that I used to think that I felt very excluded from, because it feels like it's someone else's power that then graciously the Lord drips it on me and, drip down economics, which we know doesn't work. It's not
Yeah.
that. It's like that can be, that is mine with what I already have. That's mine because I already have the power to do things with what I already have. And like we were saying earlier, with the way you then direct it, what different perspectives, different people, your bubble, bigger bubble. It's just going in that direction in a really big way because we can zoom in a bit too much. And I'm so guilty of that myself, as you, Harriet, know very, very well. I'm so good at zooming in big time. And I can zoom out to that in a work context, that's a separate conversation. I have many skills. But
Yeah.
in my like life and my own, say, money and things, I think I've been brought up to be quite prone to be very, very zoomed in, and learning to zoom out more and more and more to the point where I go, "Phew, next 10 years, it's like money's asking me at this interview going, who do you want to be in 5 years time? And I normally would just choke on that question. I don't know, because I don't know right now what money that's going to be. Right. But with that attitude, how can I think, well, it's going to be a flat there, or I'm going to move there, which are ideas that I have and I want to do. But yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? The line between, again, like idea and plan, and getting so zoomed in that you forget to look at the big picture and go, actually, today is just a blip. In the grand scheme of things, I can forgive myself for doing whatever, spending that $30 on that course, which actually I can think of exactly the course that I spent it on 2 months ago. I still haven't done it. It's a lesson. It's a
Yeah.
lesson that maybe I'll do it less and less and less. And that has been the trend already, that I've gotten wiser, like you were saying about the marketing, in the way that we shouldn't be taken advantage of, getting wiser to things. It's all a learning curve, and we can be more patient and forgiving
Yeah.
with ourselves around it.
And
Definitely.
also accept that there are going to be times when we misjudge, and it's fine. Like, that is being human. But I love what you said there about, like, you can be, if you focus in too narrow, it's
Mhm.
almost like you just find all the reasons why something's not possible almost, don't you?
Yeah.
Whereas if
Yeah.
you can step back and bring money into the conversation with you, it's almost like maybe some other things can like percolate without full answers, but it's almost like that you set the intention in whatever way
Yeah.
you do
Yeah.
that, and then
Yeah.
you take that real serious edge off it of kind of like, yeah, the narrow focus. That's
And
really,
we both know, like, we're into the actual science of the brain. Our brain works best when it's left alone, guys. Stop trying to force the brain. Try and, change whatever you're doing, switch to a different task, take a break, have a walk. But your brain will keep
yeah.
trying to problem solve at the back. And sometimes the best things will come when you take the pressure off at least a little bit. Try 10% pressure off at first. If taking the pressure off altogether is too scary, try a little bit and just practice that.
Yeah, it's like I've never had any good ideas when I've sat at my laptop, opened a blank screen and been like,
Literally.
right, let's type
Just
my
go.
best ideas. It just never happens, like, ever. It's always when you're like aimlessly driving or going A
Yes.
to B or like
Yeah.
preparing some food or
Yeah.
drink or something, and then you're like, oh, this popped into my head. That's amazing. And
Yeah.
you problem solve in that way as well, don't you? It's not always when you're
100%.
like, if you try and force it too hard, it doesn't happen. Yeah.
No, no, no. 100%.
Brilliant.
100%. Can I name drop just one more thing before we wrap
Yeah,
up?
go for it. Go
Okay.
for it.
I've
Yeah.
just finished reading a book by Candice Brathwaite, who's fantastic. I saw her live last year. Oh my God. And I got her book, Manifesto, from that show in Bristol. Oh, so good. She's like an author, an advocate. She's written two other books. Her main work is about Black motherhood, especially in diversity.
Mm,
Incredible, incredible person. I just love like her energy and her drive. And her newest book is about the different tools to like change your mindset and focusing on manifestation. Super interesting. But something that I wanted to pull out of there and share here as a final thought is, we were talking about thinking yourself, in these better situations, in the bigger goals you have, rather than zooming in really hard. And I know sometimes, I mean, for me anyway, but I know a lot of people who found these sort of visualization things a bit difficult because they sort of go, oh, I'll just say to myself, oh, I am so abundant, or I'm so well today. And what? Like, your brain then goes, here's the reasons why you're not. Reason one, reason two, reason three. It's got plenty.
yeah.
Your brain's so good at, you say a sentence, you say a thesis, and your brain will go, here's the reasons why it's not. Ta-da. And what she offers instead, where she says she worked for her much better than just trying to, say sentences to herself or think about a big goal and then just leaving it. Because I get that too. I get a big goal and I go, if I break it down into actionable things, that's how I make it happen. But that's a
Yeah.
bit of the vigilant side of mine, where this, like, I have to balance that need for control and planning with the fact that I can't control something that will happen in the future, and I need to allow that flexibility. Right, that balance is for my lifelong learning curve, and I really love it. So her thing is to instead go for affirmations, which is basically,
Mm,
instead of going, oh, I'll give you that whole I am well example, right? Instead of going, I am well to the mirror to yourself. That's not working for you because your brain's just spitting out why you're not and how you're wasting your time doing this exercise in the first place. Ask yourself, why am I well today? And collect the answers for that, because you're going, you're stating, you already, you are. You're just, why? You go, okay, well, I'm well because, I woke up healthy. I'm happy. I've got a day ahead with a friend for lunch in a minute. I've got this podcast recording. I'm, it's sunny day and it's so nice. I'm well because nothing's, I don't know, hurting me today, but maybe I could do some yoga. You start thinking of, rather than trying to give your brain a challenge of I am, these statements that just are, your brain, because it's prone to seek the danger, will go, oh, it's a trap. Here's the reasons why I'm not.
Mm.
Instead, why am I? Like, why am I don't know, wealthy today, abundant, well, happy? Why am I content? Why am I grateful? Why am I, just pick whatever you want that you're trying to work on yourself. That's part of this is obviously the mindset work. I found that really interesting as an exercise, flipping that a bit, because it was easier to come up with the answers. And it
Yeah, I
was,
love that. Yeah, because it stops you. Yeah, when you say something like in your head, I always want to counter it, like, or be cynical about it. But this is getting you in the pattern. I like it as a little puzzle because you're like asking yourself a question and then answering it. I really love that. Yeah. Oh, brilliant. I love that recommendation.
so it doesn't have to be such like a big thing you're doing, but just like you're making your coffee or your kettle's boiling in the morning and going, why am I feeling good today? Let me list the reasons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take that. It's yours. And also please do follow her
Love it.
because fantastic.
Yeah, she sounds brilliant. Oh, amazing. Okay, well, thank you so much, Paulina, for everything you've shared today. It's been a really wonderful conversation and you've really got me thinking as well. So I really recommend you make sure you're following Paulina. So you can find Paulina. The best thing to do actually is go to her website, which will be linked in the show notes, paulinafsolutions.com, and sign up for her emails because
Yes,
Paulina's actually got an email first free masterclass, which is available right now. This is all about learning how to put email at the heart of your marketing and build trust with your audience, the only way for sales to happen. And it's all without content burnout. So I'm just going to hand you back to Paulina just to add anything else about that opportunity.
Yeah, it's a free masterclass that you get instant access to when you just sign up via the landing page. So if you just head to my website, you'll find the pop-up will be right there. Or if you head anywhere else on my website, you're sure to come across it. It's probably at the top on the banner. So it really is just about focusing. If you're someone who is a bit sick of chasing the algorithm on your social media platforms and you're a small business owner and you're a bit sick of like not getting the sales from it, you're getting the clicks or the likes or whatever, but it's not actually converting. That's because that's not truly how you close the loop on a sale and nurturing that audience and sharing your values with them. And the best way, in my experience, to share the values with your audience and to really have them connect with you over who you truly are and what you stand for is by getting them in your emails. So I present to you my method for marketing, which is actually starting from email. So email first, and it branches out all out there. But if you watch it, get the masterclass, it's just a half an hour, watch that, listen to my mostly ranty, passionate masterclass. Okay, you've listened to this whole hour, so I'm sure you're used to the sound of my voice now. Just ride that momentum, guys. Get it. And also what you get at the end is a Google form where you can drop in your email newsletter and I will personally review it, give you tips on how to make it even better and how to convert it into content from there so that everything actually aligns beautifully across everywhere you're showing up with what you're actually trying to say to your audience.
That sounds amazing. So you can click straight through in the show notes to that and it's immediate access. So what's not to love? A bit more of Paulina in your inbox now. Amazing. Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Money Story Project podcast with me, Harriet Formby. If you've enjoyed the episode, please follow the show, share it with someone who might want to have a listen, and if you can, leave a review. In the show notes, you'll find links to connect with our guest and to learn more about the project itself. And if you feel called to share your own money story, you'll find details there on how to be part of a future episode. Until next time, take care and have a great day.